All right. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I've already seen 3 movies. It actually looks like a beautiful day outside, and I'm spending it inside, watching movie after movie. So far I've seen 3, Cryptozoo, Strawberry Mansion, and I Was a Simple Man. I'm gonna make a deep dish pizza and pop it in the oven here. And we're gonna keep going. On the count of 3 is next. So let's just roll right into it. Well, that's 2 more movies down, and our first world premiere is coming up quick here. Of the day, at least, first world premiere of the day. It is for a movie called The Blazing World. So then I've got 2 more movies after that, and that'll be the end of the day. All right, well, we only got 1 more to go. Just 1 more to go, and then we're done. And I can finally review these movies. So this is a long day. This was a long day. I saw 9 movies. And we'll get into that very soon. But I just want to say straight off the bat, I'm going to keep these reviews pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and concise, because there's a lot to get through, and I don't feel like editing an hour-long video going in depth on all 9 of these movies. So we're going to keep this short. We're going to keep this sweet. First movie I saw was Coming Home in the Dark, which was a New Zealand movie that I really had no expectations for. I kind of saw this on a whim. I had a free slot of time, and I just decided to watch this. And it's a fine movie. There's really nothing to say about it that's particularly great or even that bad. It's just a very fine revenge thriller. I mean, it's about a family that goes on a picnic that gets hijacked by some guys that have motivation to get the husband of this family, and that's basically the premise. It's very cut and dry, it's very short, and it's actually ultra-violent, which I liked. It's kind of shocking in parts. That's the best aspect of it, and the main villain of this is actually kind of charismatic in a weird way. He has a dark sense of humor that gave this violent movie some levity, and the performances are generally pretty good, and I love the New Zealand accent, so that's just a plus. But in terms of an actual movie or filmmaking, this is pretty, again, generic. It's pretty straightforward. It's a revenge thriller movie, the ones you've seen 100 times before, and it doesn't do a whole lot new or different. It feels like funny games without the filmmaking or the genre deconstruction. It was fine. It was entertaining. I'll probably give it a 6.
We were looking at sins of this country that could come in and kind of add a more complicated motivation to the villains, and also give the protagonist something, because in the short story he's really just he's a normal guy. Horrible thing happens to him, and we kind of wanted to give him something to unpack, so that the protagonist is also, there's something more there, and you're learning things about this guy as it goes along.
Next up is Strawberry Mansion, which I didn't have a whole lot of expectations for. This is one that I was interested mainly just on the premise alone. Basically, this movie is set in the near future of 2035, I believe. But as you quickly find out, it's sort of a retro future, as if the early 80s and maybe late 70s threw up on the future. And I like that, but I did like the idea that dreams in the future were being taxed by the federal government now. So if you dream something, then you can be taxed for it, which is sort of a weird dystopian idea that I liked. And going into this, again, I didn't really think of it much, but quickly, this movie won me over. I really enjoyed this movie. I can't say I loved it. I think I loved the first half and only liked the second half. It does start to go into schmaltzy territory near the end, and it really doubles down on its campiness and its goofiness to the point where I think it's a little too much near the end. But the first half of this is wonderful, and I did like it overall. I think this is a solid movie, a really entertaining movie that really anybody can watch. It's a romance, it's a campy 80s B movie, and it's a sort of a sci-fi movie, so it's like every genre melded into one in a really enjoyable way. It's got this super goofiness to it that feels straight out of the 80s. It's shot seemingly with a 16mm camera. I didn't hear what exactly they shot this with, but it looks like kind of crappy old film, and it looks as if they constructed a lot of the props in just like their backyard. The guy puts on this big helmet at one point, and it just looks like cardboard with cups for the eyes and like weird things just taped onto it. And I loved that campiness. I love that kind of micro-budget feel that it has. And it also tells a kind of good story, a actually mostly engaging story about advertising, about, you know, mega corporations, about privacy. It has some themes to it that I didn't expect, that I actually really liked outside of the main romance. And the fact, the main point of it seems to be commercialization can be overwhelming, and if we let it get too out of hand, then it may even control our thoughts and dreams. So I like this movie a lot. I'll give this one a 7. Solid 7 out of 10. Again, it kind of stumbles into schmaltzy territory near the end and really doubles down on its micro-budget campiness, and I'm not sure that it works entirely, but I enjoyed it.
Strawberry Mansion is a film that's about a lot of different things. It's about dreams, it's about the future, it's about past, it's about time, kind of indirectly about overconsumption, over marketing, capitalism, but all swirled together in sort of lighthearted mix. Try to throw as much as we could into this. It's an adventure film, a metaphysical love story. Goes a lot of different directions. Hopefully you enjoy it.
So next up was I Was a Simple Man. This is a movie that I didn't have really any intentions of seeing until I started seeing some early reviews pile in. It was very polarizing from what I could tell. People were either absolutely loving it or not liking it at all. So I said, perfect. That's the kind of movie I really want to see, is the polarizing ones. And I like this. I didn't love it. I can see why people don't like it. It is a very slow and kind of meandering movie, to the point where there are sections of this that are quite dull. But mainly it's a movie about death. The main character of this is an old man who is on the brink of death. He has cancer, and he's sort of recalling his life. And the ghosts of his life kind of come and comfort him. And you see his past life, you see his current life, and you see the ripple effects of his past life in his current life. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that aspect. I think it's pretty well handled. It's gorgeously shot. It's one of the better looking movies I saw so far at Sundance. And the performances are really good too. It's just a quiet movie. That's the thing with it. There's not a whole lot to say, because it is a very simple, stripped down movie that's very quiet. It's very static. A lot of times there's not much going on. It's just shots of people sitting or standing or watching something else happen. So this is a movie that I can definitely see why people don't like. But for me, in the middle of this viewing, it was kind of a nice breath for me to take. It was just a movie that was very slow, it was very quiet, and it was nice. So I give this one a 7 as well. I enjoyed this. The performances are great, it looks great, and it's just got a nice air to it.
When he passed away, my family members and other people kept saying he was a simple man, he was a simple man. But I thought to myself, no, he wasn't. And so this film is an attempt to capture the complex history of both my family and my home.
Next up was Cryptozoo, which is the complete inverse of I Was a Simple Man. This is an animated feature about a zoo housing mythical creatures, which sounds like a really great idea. I love that idea. I love the animation. And I went into this kind of expecting a lot, and what I got was a very weird kind of gonzo plot that didn't really connect with me all that much. I enjoyed this for the most part. I think it is very unique. The animation style is all hand-drawn, and it has a kind of like quirkiness and jerkiness to it that was kind of charming. It's not, that style really isn't for me. I don't love that kind of, you know, like almost stop motion style, but it is definitely unique. And the story about cryptids living in a zoo are people trying to track down these people and cryptids and put them in a zoo was interesting enough to at least make for a fun viewing. But it is very R-rated, which was surprising to me. It was actually shocking. Within the first 2 seconds, there's just like full frontal nudity from male and females in this, and then bloody, someone gets gored by a unicorn at one point, very early on. So it lays its cards on the table very early and says, hey, you better get used to it, because that's how the movie is. And I did get used to it, but the story it's telling wasn't terribly compelling. It kind of has this on-the-nose message about humans interacting with other things, trying to save it or trying to do what they believe is good for someone else or something else, and then kind of having the inverse effect on it. It was kind of on the nose, it was kind of see-through, and a lot of it, the characters didn't really gel with me, so a lot of the movie didn't really work, but it is an enjoyable Rick and Morty type of experience. It does feel like that at times, with its ultra-violence and its weird mythical creature edge. But it's fun. I'll say it's fun. I give it a 6, solid 6.
Cryptozoo is about the first ever zoo that rescues and houses mythological creatures. As cryptozookeepers struggle to capture a Baku, a legendary dream-eating hybrid creature, they begin to question whether they should house these rare beings in the confines of a zoo, or if the cryptid should remain hidden and unknown.
Next up is my favorite of the festival so far, On the Count of 3, which was a fantastic little movie that I didn't really see coming. This was one I was interested in mainly because the the director and the star of the movie was, and he absolutely nails this. He blows this out of my expectations out of the water for this. That's mainly why I went to see this, because I like him and I like Christopher Abbott. And when Tiffany Haddish has a good role, she is good, and she is good in this. But I loved this movie from start to finish. It opens with a bang, almost literally. Literally it opens with a bang, which is two people trying to commit double suicide. It's two best friends that want to kill themselves, so they decide to do it together. And what happens is they decide, you know what, let's have one last day to do whatever we want. And the rest of the movie is them just doing things. And it was absolutely wonderful because the characters were great. And the sense of humor in this was fantastic. I don't think I've laughed this hard in a movie for a little while. It was hilarious. It has a lot of quotable one-liners. I loved the characters in this. I got attached to them very quickly. And I saw myself in some things that they did. It felt really grounded to me, even though it's a heightened movie about, double suicide, about murder, about all these horrible things. But it does feel real to a certain extent. And it has real consequences, which I like too. The ending gets pretty bleak, even though it ends on a little bittersweet note. And I loved that. I think almost everything about this works for me. I love the music. I love the performances. I love the characters. I love the dialogue. I love the writing. I love its sense of humor. The only things that didn't work were a couple technical things here and there, like CG snow that just looks terrible. A guy wears a horrifically bad and noticeable fake wig, and it's just the worst. And the ending does sort of steer into some cliches, which was fine. It's a little predictable where it ends up going, but the ride, the journey to get there was wonderful, just fantastic. I really loved this movie. I give it a solid 8 out of 10.
I also do believe that, what comedians can do oftentimes is deliver reality in a way that sounds familiar.
Next up is a movie that I almost forgot I saw. It's called John and the Hole. I really did not like this movie. I found it to be intensely dull and incredibly stupid. The premise is about a young 13-year-old boy or 12-year-old, I don't remember, preteen, maybe, I don't know, I don't care, who finds a hole or a bunker by his house in the woods, and he somehow manages to drug his mom, his dad, and his sister, carry them out one by one, and dump them in this hole without hurting them at all. And then the movie commences to be about this kid just doing things. It's all very dull, it's all very stupid. At one point he literally calls the gardener that they hire because they're a rich family and imitates his mom's voice to tell them that they shouldn't come by anymore, and the gardener just buys it. It's like a little kid voice. You can clearly tell that it's not the mom. It's the most bizarre thing, and it just gets really repetitive too. I mean, you watch John go out and get some money and then go buy something that he wanted, and then he goes to the hole and drops something in for his family, and then he goes and does something he wanted, and then goes to the hole, and then he goes and does something he wanted, and then a friend comes over, and then, oh no, my mom's friend came over, and I had to, throw her off the scent, and okay, now I'm gonna go to the hole, and I'm gonna do something I wanted. It's all just very dumb and predictable, and I didn't like it, and the ending is really stupid too. It just didn't work at all for me. I didn't enjoy practically anything about this. I mean, it looks nice, the performances are generally good, it's well made, it checks off the basics of filmmaking and then just nothing else. The script is just incredibly stupid. I give it a 5. Just a 5, maybe a 4. I don't know. I got checked out pretty early in that one.
I kind of get the idea of wanting to put your parents in a hole, which is obviously sounds really messed up, but I understand it. And I am the youngest of 2 much older brothers, so I'm used to getting mad at them and being annoying and all that.
So next up was the only world premiere I saw today, which was for The Blazing World by Carlson Young, directed, written, and starring Carlson Young. And I really disliked this movie. This is the worst movie of the festival for me, and probably the worst movie I've seen this year so far. Granted, I've only seen less than 20 movies this year, but I almost hated this movie. There's a lot of points that I absolutely despised about it. On the surface, it's about a girl trying to come to grips with family trauma, and she does that through going to another astral plane and interacting with demonic forms of her parents, and trying to find out if her little sister, who drowned in a pool, is still alive in the other astral plane. Which is a fine premise. It looks terrible. Most of the sets look terrible. They look like micro-budget sets with really slick camera work, so it's this crazy juxtaposition that made no sense in my brain, seeing these ultra cheap sets with this nice camera work. That just didn't gel in my head at all. But not only are the sets cheap, the visual effects are terrible, and this movie relies very heavily on them. I don't know why you would make a low-budget movie with a lot of visual effects, because they look bad. Even just basic green screen, and this looks terrible. It's the most baffling thing. If that's not bad enough, all the performances are not good either. The only person I like in this is Udo Kier, and it just seems like he's having fun. That's the only reason I like him, just because he seems like he's hamming it up and having a good time. Everybody else is overacting to such a degree that I frequently felt like I had to back away from the movie to get away from the cringe. They were all terrible. Everyone in this is overacting, and I don't know why. It makes no sense. But not only is everyone overacting, but everyone's given terrible, terrible dialogue to say. The script is just bad. The script is just bad. The movie tries to be very deep and very philosophical, and there's dialogue that comes out that way. Almost every line of dialogue seems to try and have this philosophical edge to it, and it just comes off pretentious and hollow, which is the exact opposite of what it seems to be wanting to do. I mean, the whole movie is dedicated to this main character trying to come to grips with her family trauma. And when she goes to this other plane and confronts the demonic versions of her mom and dad, you would think that that would be her confronting it, but it really isn't. I mean, she confronts her alcoholic father, and he accuses her of stealing from him and always asking for money, when we never saw her do that. And then the way she beats him is stealing from him and stabbing him in the chest. Is that overcoming trauma? I don't understand. And then the way she beats her mom and gets the key to unlock these weird face things that don't really matter is by just grabbing the key off the wall, giving her a memory, and then they watch their waterbed ceiling turn into sand. And then that's it. It's all very hollow, it's very meaningless, And it's frustrating because I think there is some ideas here that could legitimately work. There's some good camera work. It's pretty slick looking. It's just that they made this on a micro budget, or even a low budget. I don't know if it's a micro budget. It just doesn't look good. The sets suck. The visual effects suck. The script sucks. The acting is not good. I mean, there's almost nothing to like. I give it a 3 just because the camera work's good and I love Udo Kier so much. That's it.
Her mind takes her to a dark, psychological parallel universe of her own making, where she must prioritize and ultimately confront that which haunts her.
Next up was another favorite of mine, Luzzu. Luzzu. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I really enjoyed this. At first, it seemed like it was going to be a pretty generic man who is desperate turns to the mafia type of thing, which I've seen so many times before that it's not that interesting, but it turns out to be something much more than that, which I really appreciated. This is a movie about a man who is a fisherman, and he's struggling. His family is struggling to pay their bills, they're struggling to support their new child, they're just struggling in general. So the wife is trying to do everything she can. She calls her rich parents to help out. She gets a new job. She does all these things to help out, whereas the husband seems to want to do things the traditional way. He wants to fish with his father's and his grandfather's and great-grandfather's boat to support the family, even though the world is changing so much that that's just not practical anymore. So the whole movie is about that struggle, which is very relatable. It's very real. It's very grounded, and I really enjoyed those parts of the movies. And the performances are actually really good too. These are actors that are just regular people that starred in a movie and they're great in it. I loved that aspect of it. It does make it feel like these people struggle that we're just watching like a documentary. But it also is really well shot and really well made. And I just enjoyed almost everything about this. It all comes together really nicely at the end too. The ending is great, and it actually sold me on bumping my rating up, because it is just fantastic. The main theme of it that gets cemented right at the end is the fact that, which parallels with the boat and the fisherman, you can change without changing who you are. You can go into a different profession. You can be somebody else. You can go work for a living and still be the same person you are. You don't have to change who you are to support your family. And I love that message. I think that is very appropriate in these times when artificial intelligence is coming and automation is coming. So many people are going to lose their jobs to robots in the coming years. And I think this has a good message for people like that. You got to do what you got to do sometimes, but you don't have to lose who you are to survive. I love that. I don't know. I just kind of love that message. So I give this an 8. It's a really solid movie. Really enjoyed it. Well-paced, well-structured, and even though it's sort of a man turns to mob or mafia type thing in desperation, it actually just ends up kind of being a good job for him. It kind of switches that, which I enjoyed. It's just nice.
I struck gold when I met Jesmark and David, real fishermen who became dear friends and collaborators in this project. I shadowed Jesmark and David for 2 years, going to sea and researching the beautiful world of small-scale fishing in Malta. Over this period, we rehearsed the film, improvising dialogues on an iPhone and without a script. The final piece to bring it all together was Michaela, who had a background in theater and who did an incredible job of blending right in with our fishermen. This is a deeply personal film about the pain of growing up and the things we leave behind in order to become who we must be.
And last but not least, I saw The Pink Cloud, which is another one I just didn't have much of a reaction to. I was hoping for something that would be a character study, and it just isn't. It's more of a study of what people would do if you were locked in your room or house for years on end, and it doesn't even do that well. It's just not that compelling at all. It doesn't really get that dark. It doesn't hint at much darkness either. There's a couple of moments, and the ending, which is a non-ending if you ask me, is a little bit dark, but it's also ambiguous, so it could not be dark. And I don't like that. I didn't like the characters. I didn't find the story that compelling. I will say it looks very good. It's shot very well. I love the color palette that it has. And the performances are pretty good too. This is another one, like John in the Hole, that's very well made. It checks off all the filmmaking boxes. It's just kind of hollow. It's kind of dull. Not much happens that's that interesting to me. So this is another one I'll give a solid 5 to. I don't know.
In the film, a toxic pink cloud appears in the sky and forces everyone to stay inside. Giovanna is stuck at home with Iago, a guy she had just met at a party the night before. They have to wait together for the cloud to disappear, what forces them to become a couple. My idea when I wrote the film was to explore what happiness and freedom means to each one of us. Iago is happy in his apartment life, but Giovanna feels trapped, living a life she never wanted for herself.
I've been watching movies since 8 a.m. and it is now 11 p.m. So I'm exhausted, but it was a good day overall. So that's it, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow when I see 2 more movies. Bye-bye.